All right, today we're here with Paul Young, and everyone will know Paul, of course, but we have the distinct pleasure of having Brad Jersak and John MacMurray with us as well. And, you know, every time that I see you guys get together, there's this beautiful, deep something that is in the air that is palpable. So, it's beautiful. Would you all just say a word about that? Or maybe you disagree.
I'm with two better theologians than I am.
No. I'll say a word about it. I just think that the very best conversations can happen inside of relationships.
Absolutely.
And there is an intimacy that has been formed through our trials together and through joys together and what we would call shared presence, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And I just feel such deep affection in my heart for these guys.
And same here. These are the kind of friendships that you want. And the best of friendships take no work. They just pick up where the spaces, leave off.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I said agreed.
That was really deep.
Okay. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how we met, Paul.
So, yeah,
that sounded kind of ominous or something. No, it's just so profound that it's worth sharing the story.
So you start that story.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Because way back when The Shack first came out as a book, a dear friend of mine, Dwight Martin, and his wife gave me a copy. And I remember the moment in the parking lot of a winery in Kelowna when he handed me the book and he says, "This book is a game changer. And it's about a guy who meets Father, Son, and Spirit. But get this, the father is a Black woman." I'm like, okay, I've got to read this book. And so I began to read the book. And initially I was doing, at the time, a lot of inner healing work with people who'd been. And the level of pain you were describing at the beginning was it was reflected in what I was experiencing in that kind of ministry. Mm-hmm. And I began to anticipate being angry with you because I thought, for him to go this deep into the pain, I don't know that he's going to be able to come through it without platitudes. Mm. So I was bracing myself. And then you blew my mind. And I'm like, so after that, I just really hoped that someday I could meet you. So I'll pass it over to you now.
Okay. So we were talking in the kitchen about suffering and the crazy things that happen in our world that try to get blamed on God.
Yep.
And I think part of this story has to wrap itself around Dwight and Loyd.
Yeah. You want me to pick that up still?
Yes, please.
So fast forward many years, and Dwight and Loyd lost their teenage daughter. She passed away, and they were beside themselves. And all of those kind of eruptive feelings around loss and grief had come up, and anger at God and questioning and where's the comfort and all of that. And so I went to visit them one day. Eden, my wife, and I went out to Cultus Lake. And I went out for a walk with Dwight, and a few amazing things happened at once. One was we run into an orange sign that says Shack on it. Orange signs in Canada mean movie set. And I'm like, this is interesting, because here we are, and I think we're walking by the set of The Shack. And so I took a selfie with Dwight and I sent it to you.
Yeah.
But also then as we continued walking, I said, you gave me The Shack back in the day. I'm wondering if you've ever revisited it since Adri died.
I didn't know that.
And he said, I've tried. And I can't get through chapter 1. I just can't do it. And I said, well, that's really okay, but it is a diagnostic tool then, isn't it, about where you're at in your journey. So meanwhile,
Meanwhile, I'm on this adventure with regard to the movie, and I gave away all creative control. I gave away all rights, so I never thought that I would be involved. And I kept being pulled back in by Lionsgate, by Netter Productions, and they even asked me to come up first day shoot and pray a blessing over the entire cast and crew, which is pretty fantastic for a secular movie outfit. And so this was happening. Meanwhile, I had met Eden because I'd gone up and spoken at the church that she was now pastoring, since you were off into other things.
Yeah.
And you had pastored and kind of just caved into the depth of the losses, a whole series of losses in the community.
Yeah.
And you had been trying to carry that burden, and it just piled up, right?
Yeah.
And since the death of their daughter, Dwight and Lori had gone kind of different directions.
Yeah.
Dwight in trying to find a way to connect to his emotional world. Lori lost in her emotional world, and
Very
she's
good.
a spiritual director.
Yeah.
And she couldn't pull herself out. Every time she got close to pulling herself out, something major would remind her that pulled her back down into her sorrows. And she really got stuck.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about a lot of this.
What did you call it in the book? The Great Sorrow?
Great sadness.
Great sadness. That's how she would describe it. She was stuck in the great sadness.
Yeah. And after I'd met Eden, and about that same time, we started emailing.
Yeah.
And our relationship grew through emails. And so I'm sitting in my office and I get a phone call. I hadn't been on set since the very beginning. And now, and if you know movies at all, they have multiple sets. And depending on when the actors are available, they shoot a scene from, or scenes at those different sets. And so they don't shoot in sequence. They don't start with the beginning of the shack and then shoot it throughout. The first day's shoot was actually in White Rock. And it was the scene in the neighborhood where they're about to pack up the kids. Mackenzie is to go to Wallowa Lake, which and have fun. But in that scene, it's in the neighborhood, and Tim McGraw, who plays Willie, comes over, and that whole thing. Nan's going to go her separate direction, and that was the first day shoot that I got to be at. But now it's 60 days later, and I get a phone call. Absolutely unexpected. And they said, "Hey, Paul, would you want to come back up and spend a day with us at a set up in British Columbia?" Now, my background, my family is from British Columbia, and still are in British Columbia. And my grandparents lived in Kelowna at the time, way back. So I'm looking at the calendar. They said, "We want to fly you up on Wednesday. We'll put you up in a hotel in Abbotsford, and then you can spend all day Thursday, and we'll fly you back on Friday." And I looked at the calendar, and I'm like wide open. It's like, yeah, let's, that would be perfect. So they said, we'll send you a ticket and all that. And I'm sitting there going, Brad lives right next door to Abbotsford. Now, he's probably in England or he's probably somewhere else because he's gone a lot. And I wonder if he's around. So I emailed Brad and I said, "Look, this is what's happening. I'm going to come up and my whole schedule." And I get an email back right away and it says, "Can I pick you up at the airport?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm getting in at 11:30 in the morning." He said, "Well, then," this is all on email, "well, I'll pick you up, then we'll go have lunch together, and then we'll talk theology afternoon, and you can have supper with me and Eden, and then go to your hotel." And I'm like, that'll be perfect. It's not but a few minutes later that Brad sends me that photo in the woods at Cultus Lake where he and Dwight were walking with the big orange sign. And he says, look, I'm here. There's a movie set somewhere. And then the email got a little bit, well, quite a bit serious. And he tells me about the loss that Dwight and Lori had. And he said, you know, if there's any way that it could work out that you could spend even 10 minutes with Dwight and Lori, I think it would be significant.
Pause there.
Pause there.
So of all the sets they could have chosen anywhere.
No, wait. You can't get there first.
Okay.
Can't get there first.
Okay.
All right.
I trust you on storytelling,
Oh
by
my
the way.
So I fly up. Brad picks me up.
Yeah.
We spent lunch together, talked theology afternoon. It was fantastic. And then I have supper with them, and they said, we'll come down, you know, for that day, and then we're going to go back up to Cultus Lake. And because Dwight and Lori have a little summer place up there, and we're up there for a week. I think that's what it was.
Yep.
And so we spend, and I told them, I don't know what set I'm going. They didn't tell me what set I'm going on. It could be any of multiple sets. And so in the morning, or when I get the call sheet, is what they give you, the call sheet. And that'll tell you when we're picking you up and where we're taking you. And I said, when I get the call sheet, I'll let you know. And then we'll figure it out. And I'm thinking, if it takes an extra day, it's worth it. I'll stay, and just to have some time with Dwight and Lori.
Yeah.
And I don't get the call sheet till 11:30 that night. So it's too late to let them know. But the call sheet says, we're going to pick you up at 9:30 in the morning and take you to the set location at Cultus Lake.
3 blocks from their cabin.
3 blocks from their cabin. And so I'm like, this is a coincidence. Yeah, right. And so in the morning, they pick me up. They drive me up to Cultus Lake. And as we're coming into the set location, I'm texting Brad, I'm right here. And he goes, okay, I'll come down and get you at lunch. If you've got some time, you think you'll have any time? And I'm like, yeah, I'll come down and get you at lunch and take you back. Even if you can only spend 10 minutes, that'll be great. And I'm like, yeah. So turns out that the set is huge. This piece of property that they're on is there was a year between private ownership that was selling it to the province, and then the province taking over as a national park, a provincial park. And so it was vacant, and they got all the permissions. And this is where they built the shack. They built every iteration of the shack. And they were using Cultus Lake as the lake that they were going to, Wallowa Lake. And they wanted me to come on set to see the shack. You know, the last, where the shack's been all rebuilt and beautiful, and Mackenzie spends most of his weekend there. So I walk right over, and there happens to be 3 people that are standing in a group, and it's Gil Netter, his wife, Lonnie Netter, and the director. So the producers and the director. Stu Hazeldine, the director. I have to go through my Rolodex.
Mm-hmm.
And so I walk over to them, and we hug and all that kind of stuff. And then I say, I have a question for you. I have some friends who are just 150 yards from here. Would it be possible that they could come spend the day with me on set? And they went, of course. And so 20 minutes later, down the waterfront comes Brad and Eden, and Dwight and Lori. And I meet them. There's a little a beam that went across the little creek there. And they walked onto the set of the shack, the movie that was being shot. And I hugged him. And Lori was the last person I hugged when they came across that. And there's a thing about presence and about hugs that I call them a sacrament, right? When you hug someone, a lot of times you can feel in their bodies what they're going through. And when I hugged Lori, she had a grip inside. And I think you told me that she didn't want to be there.
Yeah, she was fearful of what her emotions would do, because this is about the loss of a daughter.
Yeah. And so she comes on set, I hug her, and I don't let her go.
And she's thinking, oh no, he knows.
Oh.
Until she melted.
Yeah, finally, she too became present.
Yeah.
Right? And I hugged her. And then but I still didn't know what we were going to see. They were going to shoot one shot multiple times all morning, take a lunch break, one shot multiple times all afternoon, and then have a shot in the evening. But I don't know what it is. And so one of the workers comes over and they go, okay, we're going to shoot a shot at the shack, but one, we can't get close because we don't want sound to interfere. Two, it's going to be a long ways away and you're not going to be able to see very well. So we have a solution. And they have this tent, big tent, called Video Village. And in the tent, the producer and the director look at huge screens and they can see what's the camera's shooting, and they have headphones on and they can hear exactly what's being picked up by the microphones. They put, without anybody asking them, they put 5 chairs right in front of the screens, each with a headset, so that we could see. And so the shots that you see in the movie, we're 15 feet away inside Video Village, right in front of the screens, listening to what's going on. And I think you were on one end and I was on one end. And so we go sit down and we find out that the scene they're going to shoot all morning long is the scene in the movie where, right after where Mackenzie woke up after having nightmares his first night there. The nightmare is that he has a flying dream and he suddenly crashes down into the ground and his feet are stuck in the mud and he can't move. And Missy is being pulled away by the kidnapper. And she's yelling, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." And he's trying to get there. And he wakes up and he's full of sweat. He's in angst. He's just in turmoil. And then he walks out onto the porch. That's where we begin the shoot. He walks out on the porch and breakfast is already. Papa's got breakfast and it's full of different things. And Mackenzie's perturbed. And the first thing the Papa says, "So, Mac, how did you sleep?" "Fine." Right? "Fine." And she said, "I got breakfast for you." "Oh no," she says, "dreams are important. They're a way of opening up the windows, letting the bad air out," which is a Bruce Cockburn line. Mm. And he just sits down. I think he has his arms folded. And they start a conversation. And he has a cup of coffee in front of him. And you can see the buildup of his sorrow that he has repressed down start to percolate to the top. And then there is part of this scene. They're shooting this all in one shot. And it's like, "Mackenzie, you know what your problem is? You don't believe I'm good. And as long as you don't believe I'm good, you're never going to be able to trust me." And he goes, "Why? Or
How?
why would I ever trust you? Yeah. My daughter is dead. And
Smashes them up.
There is nothing you can do about it." Oh my gosh.
And he gets up and walks away.
And walks away and they go, "Cut." And we're sitting in Video Village with all this trauma inside this group of people around the death of a daughter. And we're just like,
and I've had that conversation with them for like 3 or 4 years, over and over and over. And now they're watching the scene over and over. And it's not like 3 or 4 takes.
Those are like 15 times. But after I mean, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh. And cut, reset, they reset, we watch it again. Cut, reset, we reset. How can I trust you? You know, how my daughter's dead and there's nothing you can do about it. Smash, walk off, cut. Third time, Lori gets up from her seat and walks out of the tent and is just standing there. And I walk out and I hug her and she just starts to weep. And then she pushes me away and walks back in and sits down and watches it 10 more times. And then we break for lunch. And Octavia comes over and gives Lori a hug. And
Octavia was the woman who played Papa.
Yeah. And Sumi, who played the Holy Spirit, gives him a hug. And Aviva Lush, who plays Jesus, hugs on him. And you're just like, oh. So we then go back to the afternoon shoot. And it's the shoot where Mackenzie and Papa have been having an argument in the kitchen and has gotten really intense. And finally, Mackenzie just walks out and he's sitting on the porch. And Papa says, supper will be ready in a bit. And Papa says, you see that bird? That bird was created to fly. But sometimes pain has a way of clipping your wings and you forget you were created to fly. And that scene just ripped into us for a second time. When you see those scenes, we're right there. This group of us watching those scenes.
Grieving a real loss together.
Of a real daughter.
Yeah.
And we watch it 10, 12 times. And then we break for supper. And Dwight and Lori and Brad and Eden say, we've got some things that we need to do, so we need to leave. And Lori says to me, you have no idea what this day has meant to me. And I'm thinking, I don't. Like here I write this little story for my kids. It gets turned into a film. They decide to invite me. I don't have any rights. I don't have any creative control. They invite me to come spend a day on the set. Oh, and Brad happens to be in town. And oh, there's this tragedy that's been going on that I'm unaware of. And oh, they happen to be staying right there at Cultus Lake where they've invited me. And oh, Dwight and Brad are walking in the woods and they didn't know that there was a set location there. And oh, yes, they want them to come and they want them to sit right in Video Village. And these are the shots that are being shot right, they are the most palpable scenes in the movie with regard to their situations.
Relentlessly.
Yeah.
And that's how we met.
That's how we met.
And in retrospect now, Lori would say that is the day her great sadness turned to the grand embrace.
And she did for the next, I guess, a number of years, but you and I were participant in a conference that she held called the Grand Embrace, which she named after the hug that I gave her when she stepped across and onto that set.